Robert, suggestions maybe this is straight out of the Putin playbook.
Yes, I think that he was laying down a new line of confrontation with the West. And I think that this is quite serious. The one thing he avoided mentioning, of course, is what is actually happening on the battlefront itself, where things are not so good. You've talked about this much advertised offensive. There have been probes and actions where Russia hasn't come off very well. So we go global. He talked about new allies, which was fascinating. But most serious was he's calling off the last major agreement he has with the West and the United States, that he's suspending the strategic arms reduction talks. And that means all agreements, major military agreements with the West, have gone. What he's going to do next, we can only guess, because on the front, I have to reiterate, it's stalemate.
Yeah, and an indication, of course, that even as the weather warms, that he perhaps won't be able to make any major inroads towards Kyiv or elsewhere. But the Donbass, another question, and of course he's still got Crimea. But the other thing that people have been starting to talk about is the position of Belarus and then Moldova, that maybe he will turn the focus away from Ukraine itself.
I'm not entirely sure about that. You're quite right. I think that he may have some nasty tricks up his sleeve, in that he may do things around the Arctic, around the Black Sea, may go maritime. And by the way, that's where Britain really is vulnerable. Our seas are vulnerable. If Russia starts probing underwater pipelines, underwater cables, which they have been doing already over the past year, then we have got to up our game. And I think that this is why actually this posturing, as well as new posture of Putin, really has a real message for the Brits. It's strengthened Ben Wallace's hand, of course, as he asks for more money for defence. It really is needed.
And what do you make of this or growing accord, perhaps, with Beijing and China, indicating that perhaps it will be talking to the Kremlin? I mean, is that going to be direct supply of armaments and ammunition? Because that could cause NATO a real problem, just keeping up with the guns and bullets.
Well, I really can't predict, but I think it's the really important development on the anniversary weekend. It's probably more important than anything that's going to happen on the battlefield. What is Xi going to do? We hear he's got a peace plan, and we know that they're going to buy more hydrocarbons from Russia, though that can't be significant because the facilities, the infrastructure isn't there. But this did feature in the Putin speech. Opening to Mongolia, opening to China, and, quote, the new allies or new alliances with Iran and India. I think that where Xi will go, to answer you, he will be very cautious about being seen to be directly involved militarily. And I think that he's going to hold off for a bit about arms, because I think he's going to watch to see the way, as you say, in inverted commas, this spring offensive, which looks a bit of a dud already, or very partial, how that goes, and then China will decide what to do militarily.
And looking at the audience reaction to the speech, rambling over 2 hours or more, stony-faced silence apart from the sort of obligatory applause. What is the position, do you think, of Putin in the Kremlin, bearing in mind all the suggestions that maybe the Wagner group are getting a little bit frustrated, and others looking at the cost in men and materiel of what's been called this operation, the special military operation?
Wagner Group extremely angry because it's not getting artillery that it's asked for and artillery shells that it needs. And they've had a pasting in the central Donbass sector. There's no doubt about it. And Putin is holding Prigozhin, their leader, at arm's length. That's the Wagner Group. And they're finding it very difficult to absorb irregulars like Wagner into the main forces there. Now, the audience, it was sort of, they looked like ventriloquist dolls. They looked absolutely stony-faced. There was hardly a smile between them, and this was the hand-picked. This was Putin loyalism central.
Yeah.
And they didn't look too pleased, did they?
Well, 2 hours of it as well, so who knows?